no, it was how can we service our taxpayers better? Right now there's just so much waste and noise and challenges that are just for whatever reason just really embedded in how we do state and local government. So for you guys to take a stand and figure out how can we do this better, because the taxpayer deserves it.
It wasn't just about, hey, let's crunch the numbers and find the better way to do government. It was, let's take a look at things and find the better way to serve other people, and the results are going to be a better, more robust, and stable government.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. This episode is going to run a little bit different than our normal episodes. What you're going to listen to next is a recording of Senator Ricketts, Senator of Nebraska, addressing Congress about the Office of Efficiency. And he talks about the work that was done when he was governor of the state of Nebraska and leading a team, developing a business system that he used in the private sector and then was developed into what was successful in the public sector at the state of Nebraska. And he shares many different case studies and examples of how Lean and Six Sigma helped create value and add a considerable amount of savings back into the taxpayer's lap. So I'm excited for you to listen to this address to Congress from Senator Ricketts. And then afterward, Shayne and I will kind of break down exactly what Senator Ricketts is talking about and go into a little bit more detail about the program at the state of Nebraska. So enjoy.
As well as Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy for their effort to be able to create the Department of Government Efficiency. This is something that is near and dear to my heart because as governor of Nebraska, this is what we did. We focused on how we could drive efficiency through our state operations. Now, if you want to think about the big argument between Republicans and Democrats on a really macro scale, what it is, it comes down to what should government properly do? What should be the size and scope of government? But there's actually things we agree the government should do between Republicans and Democrats. And for those things, we should do them really, really well. All too often, government fails because it's not properly managed, because we don't do a good job. And when we don't do a good job, then we end up wasting the taxpayers' dollars. As governor of Nebraska, this is one of the things I focused on to be able to do a better job on. Take my private sector experiences, coming from the business world, and applying them to run state government. And we show that the things that you do in the private sector will work in running the public sector as well. At the state of Nebraska, we implemented Lean Six Sigma. Lean Six Sigma is a process improvement methodology. There's a number of them out there. This is the one we chose. What it does is you break down an operation, count what the steps are, what the steps should be, get the frontline people engaged, the people actually doing the work involved in looking at those steps, and see if you can cut the waste, the number of steps, and everything else so you can make the process more efficient. And that's how you can do a better job of actually providing services while reducing costs at the same time. And that's the thing. Every time you get to government and say, oh, we want to cut expenses, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you're going to cut services. No. In the private sector, you can't go to your customers and say, well, I'm going to reduce your prices, but I'm going to also reduce your service, because your customer will go someplace else. It doesn't work that way. So the private sector figures out how to do a better job of providing services while reducing their expenses. We can do the same thing in government. Now, in the private sector, you have competition that's going to drive inefficient businesses out. In the government sector, it's going to require people like Elon and Vivek, senators here in this room, to be able to drive that through our government agencies to get that efficiency. I want to talk a little bit about what we did because it was very effective. I mentioned that you measured the steps. You count how many steps there are and see where the overlaps are. One area we did it was air construction permits, for example. We had 190 steps that it took to issue that permit. We cut that down to 22 steps. And by doing that, it was 110 steps that we cut down to 22. By doing that, we cut it down from 190 days to be able to issue that permit to 65 days. Now, we can't change any of the environmental regulations. That was just a better job of issuing those permits. And when you free up your teammates' time, because they're not wasting time on all those extra steps, they can do more work, they're more productive, and focus on things that are going to be more important. For example, more difficult permits. And we use this in a variety of ways and showed lots of improvement. For example, in our economic assistance line, in August 2014, it was taking about 23 minutes to answer that phone call. We set a goal of setting 5 minutes or less to answer those phone calls for those people calling in seeking our assistance. We hit that goal all the way up until the pandemic. It was taking us 40 days to issue SNAP applications, food stamps. Again, if you're one of those families in need and it's taking 40 days to process that application, what is that saying about how we think about you? We set a goal of getting those permits done or those applications done in 10 days. We hit that all the way up until we hit the pandemic. And then even when we got out of compliance, when we started going above 10 days, we knew we were above it and we could take steps to start getting that number back down again. We were able to do it in a variety of other ways, like, for example, Department of Motor Vehicles, getting you your driver's license. In our centers of excellence, we were able to get that from 22 minutes down to 8 minutes, get people in and out the door. Our green sheets, which is what we use in our Department of Transportation to be able to make sure that our contractors are doing the right things with regard to the environment or antiquities or whatever, making sure they're following all the rules. We were able to cut that from 16 days to get it down to 3 days so that those contractors can get into the field faster and get our projects moving faster. Or here's another one. We would issue reimbursement checks to families with children who had special needs. Often these special needs children will have to have specialized care. Families will have to travel to that hospital to go get that. They get reimbursed for those expenses. But it was taking us 13 to 15 days to reimburse those expenses. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, that's over a 2-week pay period. Those families had to float those costs from one paycheck to the next paycheck. And you know, and I know, that a lot of families live paycheck to paycheck. That put a financial burden on those families with kids with special needs. We were able to cut that time down to 2 days to be able to make sure we could get those expense checks back to those families in need so that they wouldn't have to float that and experience that financial hardship from one payment to the next. Well, what did we have to do that? We had to get everybody on board, our entire team. At the end of the day, at the state of Nebraska, we trained over 30,000 of our teammates in the Lean Six Sigma process. They were white belts, kind of the introductory one. Over 6,200 of our mid-level managers in the yellow belt, the next level up. We trained 248 executive green belts. Those are the upper level executives. Again, more training. And then we trained 9 black belts. Those are the folks that oversee the whole program. And by implementing all of that, we were able to save over 900,000 hours of our teammates' time. We did over 1,000 different projects. We saved $115 million in hard savings. And because of those processes, for example, we were able to reduce the square footage that we were occupying as a state of Nebraska by 60,000 square feet we took off our rolls. We reduced our employment by 3.5%. And we were able to control spending. Before I became governor, our budget was growing at 6.5% a year. I would say that was not sustainable. We were able to, on average, while I was governor, keep that growth of our budget to just 2.8% a year. Just 2.8% a year on average. And I might just contrast what we're doing here at the federal government right now. In 2019, we spent $4.4 trillion. 2024, that was closer to 6.8, 6.9 trillion. That's roughly a 55% increase in just 5 years. Folks, that is not sustainable. And that is why this Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, and what this incoming administration is going to do is so important. We've got to be able to get our spending under control. It is a risk to our country.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. My name is Patrick Adams, and I'm joined by my friend Shayne, who is also one of our Lean Solutions Podcast hosts. And today we are going to join you in breaking down the video that you just watched of Senator Ricketts talking about the government side of efficiency, the Office of Efficiency, and what they were able to do at the state of Nebraska, which is pretty amazing. Shayne was actually there, so I'm excited to hear his side of
Firsthand
things.
right here.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be a fascinating discussion about government efficiency and how principles from the private sector can actually revolutionize the public sector, right? So Senator Ricketts, in the video that you just watched, he's addressing Congress and highlighting the transformational impact that Lean and Six Sigma can have and did have during his tenure as the governor of Nebraska. And as we, kind of go into this next year of 2025, this Office of Efficiency is going to come about. And we're hearing about that in the news. And I think many of us are wondering, what does that mean? What does that look like? And Shayne and I do not have the answers to that. We have no idea what that's going to look like.
I have a hope.
We have hope.
I have a hope.
Yes. There are certain things that we would like to see happen, but we have no idea what that will look like. But what we do know is what actually was done at the state of Nebraska, which is what you just heard about from Senator Ricketts. And that's what we're going to break down and talk about. So during this episode, we're going to explore the takeaways from his address to Congress, discuss kind of the broader implications of public service efficiency, and really kind of hear from Shayne on his experience being there at the state of Nebraska while all of this was happening. So Shayne, initial thoughts on the video after you watched Senator Ricketts addressing Congress about the work that you guys did.
Initially I was geeked to see it. I was like, what? Because it was funny because it was in the evening. I was sitting on my couch and my phone just started going off. I'm like, what's going on? And we developed a really tight community of those of us that were doing the continuous improvement at the state, and we still keep in touch with each other, even though some of us have moved on, to other things, myself included. But we were all going back and forth, like, oh, Ricketts is on. What's going on? We're all watching it and then commenting and whatnot. So initially I was like, yeah, this is really cool. And I appreciated a lot of the things that he was saying. And I think he did a pretty good job, and I wrote down this, as he was talking, I was like, okay, so what is he saying? The things that were done, like you mentioned in the private, things that are done in the private sector can work in the public sector. And I like how he broke it down to, this is how we approached continuous improvement at the state of Nebraska. We got to know the process. We involved the people who do the work. We cut the waste, and then we made it more efficient. And if you, watching it, you heard over and over again him talking about, this really was about how can we better serve the citizens of Nebraska. That's what he was talking about. And that that's what really excited me about even taking that job almost 6 years ago, was the service side of things. How can we, it wasn't just about, hey, let's crunch the numbers and find the better way to do government. It was, let's take a look at things and find the better way to serve other people. And the results are going to be a better, more robust and stable government.
Right. Yeah, no, I that came out to me very clearly on Senator Ricketts did not say anything about, we went out there and just tried to cut as much of the waste as we could financially, and we laid people off, and we, did this, and the results of that are lower. No, it was, how can we service our taxpayers better? How can we, so let's look at each piece of the state government office and where are the inefficiencies? Because I think we all can say that, in government, whether it's federal, state, local, the inefficiency almost seems unavoidable. Hopefully in the future, that's not the case, but right now there's just so much waste and noise and challenges that are just for whatever reason just really embedded in how we do state and local government. So for you guys to take a stand and say, we're not going to just cut people, we're not going to just try to figure out where we can squeeze another penny, but we're really going to look at how we're operating, how we're conducting our services,
Right.
and figure out how can we do this better, because the taxpayer deserves it. There's a certain level of respect for the money that we've been, that we're responsible for.
Yeah.
And now we need to do what's right with that. And, obviously the results are amazing. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because he mentioned, in the private sector, competition drives out those who are inefficient. But, that's different when it comes to the public sector, because the public sector requires leadership. It requires vision. It requires support. It requires action. As a state government, we didn't have another state government that was trying to woo our citizens away, with better services.
Sure.
So it took that that leadership and that vision to say, how can we provide better services while at the same time reduce the cost to do those services? And the thing that I talked about all the time when I was working with teams is, it's likely that no matter how we reduce the process that they're working on and take away some of the noise and make it, more simplified and shorten the time, there will always be more that needs to be done. I have being in in state government, I never saw anyone that didn't have more than they could do already. So if we could find ways to help them prioritize, help them be able to really focus on those value added activities, the things that really would put our customers and our citizens front and center for what we're doing, that it just helped, because you can't avoid, there's just rules and regulations and bureaucracy and just things that just kind of add layers upon layers, that sometimes you tease stuff out and find out, oh, we can't change very much, but let's do what we can change. And let's try to get that focus back on that value add.
I love it. So let's back up here. One of the things I heard Senator Ricketts say is that he took what he learned in the private sector and then brought it to the public sector. So obviously he didn't do it by himself. He had a really great team in place, and you were part of that. And I think you came in a little bit later after he had come in, and kind of things started to get some traction, and then you were brought in at that point. Do you know anything about the history for Senator Ricketts, as far as where was he in the private sector? And then I don't know what the beginning looked like. I know Matt Singh was there. What did that look like to start to put that together and figure out, okay, well, this worked in the private sector. Do we need to make changes? What do we adjust? What do we take? What do we not take with us to create this structure for the state of Nebraska? Do you know anything about kind of the background or the history of that?
It's kind of fuzzy in my head. I've heard the story so many times that, and then just kind of moved on from it. But he did come in, Governor Ricketts, when he became governor, Senator Ricketts came in with, and I am going to be incredibly embarrassed if this is incorrect. I believe he was a part of TD Ameritrade.
Okay.
And working in a system, a very large corporate system that, again, if you're inefficient in the, in the private sector, you're out. Like, that will just weed you out. So he came in saying, hey, I think we can do state government better. Let's start applying some of the business sense to how we do state government. And he had the vision to start capturing people that were really good at this kind of thing. You mentioned Matt Singh, but he also brought on board Jason Jackson, who was an incredible visionary and leader in this, understanding, all the things that need to be. How can we promote this? How can we encourage people to do this? How can we support the work? There was bringing Matt in and starting to develop the system, because I know they tried to do this with consultants when they first started, and they brought in consultants, but it wasn't maybe a year or two that they had consultants trying to do this, and it just didn't stick because they needed to be embedded in all the
Right.
agencies, the different
Right.
26 to however many agencies there are at the state. The governor and his vision team decided we need to embed this here. We need to create this here and create our own center of operational excellence. And
Sure.
that's what Matt Singh, I know we've had him on,
Yeah.
a time or two. That's what he was able to do with a team that he collected around him. I can think of names like Don Arp Jr. and Jesse Cushman, and he had some great people that helped build that up and actually create Lean Six Sigma in such a way that it was very specific to the state needs. Because you use Lean Six Sigma in manufacturing all the time.
Right.
We've talked about that. And the beauty of Lean Six Sigma is it's adaptable, right? It can change. You can tweak it to meet the needs of whatever the organization has. And that's what they were able to do. And it took a while for leadership and the different agency directors to really catch on and to understand that, hey, this is, in your best interest, but also this is something that doesn't need to be just the latest trend in a flash in the pan, and we're just going to come in and then bounce out.
Right.
This is something that we needed to, or they needed to pull all of the leadership involved in this, as part of that team and just bring everyone alongside with it, not doing it to them, but doing it with them.
Right. Yeah, that actually leads me to a question. Well, before I go to that question though, I also want to, so for you personally, what was your role when you came in the beginning? What was your role and what were you responsible for during your time with the state? Before I ask my question.
The state they created a very robust system and they trained everyone specifically to that robust system. Even if you've had a background in lean or whatnot, we were able to train everyone to what the state needed. And what we trained them to be was process improvement coordinators is what we called them. And then, so we had this dotted line to the Center of Operational Excellence, which was under DAS, Department of Administrative Services, directly connected to the governor. But all of the process improvement coordinators and program managers is what we were able to develop into. Those then became embedded in the agencies and in a lot of the bigger agencies, so that they were there. They had offices there. They sat there. They knew the people. They spent time with the frontline workers and so that's what my job became was I went to the DOT. I was able to go to the DOT, which was an amazing experience. In working with the engineers and all the people that help our state roads and highway systems. And the job is to simply come beside and figure out with leadership, hey, what are your priorities for improvement? What are some of the things that we can do to improve? Some of those were financial. How can we try to save money? And it wasn't about cutting programs.
Yeah.
It was, okay, so where are we spending the most money? Let's try to identify some of those things. And let's look at how we can improve that system, or where are the pain points? Where are people complaining the most? Where do we have the most? We had three things in regards to identifying a project. Was it political? In that, the public there was an outcry or there was news or whatever it was, but there was attention to certain things. And in Governor Ricketts, he mentioned, like the SNAP program and the reimbursement for the citizens that have special needs children and the things they had to do. That came through public saying, hey, this is kind of an issue. So it was political, it was financial. Hey, where can we save some money? Or it was operational. Hey, this just is not working well for either ourselves or the partners that we work with, the utilities or the other agencies that we work with. And that was kind of a long-winded way of saying that was a big part of what we did as continuous improvement practitioners there, or process improvement coordinators is what we called them. Was getting in the weeds with that and working with leadership, management, and frontline in finding ways to really make efficiency work.
Yeah. So what did that look like for frontline workers? As you mentioned, you were training them and engaging them in ideas and solutioning, root cause analysis.
Yeah.
What did that look like? Was it difficult? Were they ready? Were they engaged? Were they excited? Were there challenges along the way? I mean, but you and I both know that how critical it is to in both the private and the public
Yeah.
sector to engage and empower people at the front line, the people that are, the experts in whatever process that they're working in. So what did that look like when you were there?
That was actually kind of a slow go for at least and I'm going to speak now. I'm going to kind of narrow down and to speak to my team, because I wasn't the only pick or process improvement practitioner or I'm sorry, coordinator at the DOT. We had typically a team of 4. Sometimes it varied just a little bit down to 3. But we had a road to hoe to try to win people over,
Mm,
and try to win the hearts and minds of people and let them know that we're not coming in to tell you how to do your job. We're coming in to help you, give you lens and tools to look differently at your job and the things you do, and tools to be able to make the changes that are going to make your job easier, better, faster, and cheaper. Those
yeah,
those were often kind of the 4 things that we were looking at. How can we make this work easier for you? Because if we can make it easier, you can really focus your energy on more challenging things. How can we make it faster so that you can, get to the things you need to get to, but also so we can get those services to the people who really want it? So easier, better, faster, cheaper? How can we improve the quality, and how can we reduce the cost in how things work? And once people started seeing that, especially the leadership, because we had very specific ways of going about it, as I mentioned before, in how we our methodology, and we had a lot of documentation. And one of them was an ROI sheet. We wanted to know what's the return on investment before we asked leadership to give us, this team of 4 to 5 to 6 people to work on this project. We let them know this is how much it's going to cost, in hours. Hey, we're going to have Patrick, and we're going to have John, and we're going to have Andy, and we're going to have Catherine, and probably we're going to be using them for, the next, over this month, we're probably going to be using them for, maybe 8 to 12 hours. So they understood that. But here's what we believe the return is going to be, and maybe
mm,
we're going to cut this process from taking, I think of a very specific one, taking 19 days to do. We're going to take it down to 2 days. So while, we can't say, oh, we saved, this much money. We can say, look at the service we're now able to provide to the citizens. They don't have to wait all
right.
those times. And there were times definitely where we were able to save money.
Hello, everyone. I am sorry to interrupt this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast, but I wanted to take a moment to invite you to pick up a copy of my Shingo Award-winning book, Avoiding the Continuous Appearance Trap. In the book, I contrast the cultures of 2 companies I worked for. And though each started with similar lean models, one was mechanistic and only gave the appearance of lean, while the other developed a true culture of continuous improvement. The contrast provides a vivid example of the difference between fake lean and true lean. You can find the book on Amazon. Simply search my name or the title of the book. You aren't a reader? No worries. The audiobook is also available on Audible. Now, back to the show. Sure, sure. Well, of course, that's a result of the work that you were doing.
Right. Right.
Definitely.
But winning the hearts was, that took some time. It
Right,
was, in my 5 years there, it took at least 3 years before people stopped like avoiding me, because I'm
right.
one who will just kind of wander around, and I want to get to know the people, and I'm going to their offices, and I'm sitting down and I'm listening to them, and we're in the meetings. That's what we were all doing. And in my last 2 years, it was an amazing shift to where people started requesting, and we had this wait list, basically, of all these projects that people wanted us to do.
Mm,
And the synergy that we were able to do with the other divisions in the department was really cool to see. So
yeah.
I can say that
Y-
while it took time, it's not going to be a really fast, typically not going to be a really fast turnaround. In regards to getting people to see the value in this and to win the hearts and minds.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's fun, and it's really, really cool to see that, and to be able to help people and get them excited about it. And then they start, replicating what we were doing.
Right. Right. That could be a whole nother episode on winning the hearts and minds of frontline workers, or whatever, however you want to say it. Because
Right.
I mean, think about the soft skills that are necessary for, you as a lean practitioner to just be resilient in building those relationships, developing the trust, helping people to see the value, and then eventually at the end of all of that, getting over the top of the mountain, and now people are requesting and saying, "Where's Shayne? I haven't seen him in a while. Miss you." Right? That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. So we could do a whole nother episode on that. Maybe we will. But I want to go back to the what Senator Ricketts talked about when he mentioned, reduction in process times. You talked a little bit about it too, specifically in the SNAP applications and air construction permits. I mean, crazy remarkable what you guys were able to do with just those two services. What challenges do you think other leaders will have, that to get similar results? Maybe at the state level, or maybe it's the local level, maybe the federal level when it comes to the Office of Efficiency. What challenges do you think they're going to face that maybe were similar to yours,
Right.
that we need to look out for?
Yeah. The first thing is doubt or unbelief. That, I mean, even myself going into things, when I was trained, and then how I was able to train it after experiencing this, the first thing that I had to overcome was the doubt. Are we really able to do this? Can we produce the results that we say we can? Can we cut it down by half or more? Can we cut the process steps, by this much, or can we, whatever it might be? That was the first thing, was just getting people to trust the system that we had in place, that it was going to give them the results that they wanted. In government, it's another huge challenge is just the regulations that are there, and they're there for a reason, but having to work through those regulations and those policies, and a little bit of the bureaucracy, was a challenge. And it took leadership, because part of what we're able to do is when people would say, yeah, we can't change that because of, it's this regulation or that regulation, or maybe it's a state statute that was written back in 1970, but it still has implications so many times. We were able to uncover statutes and regulations that state had, hey, we have to fax this, or we have to have a hard copy. We had file drawers, rooms full of file drawers that we needed to have, because it said we were supposed to keep a physical copy. What does that mean? And then changing to the, kind of the new technology, or even, okay, fax is not terribly new, but just those ideas of, hey, this needs to be updated. And when we found those, we were then given an avenue to push those up to people who could make those changes, because changing state, and federal regulations takes a good while. But
Right.
if we could bring those to attention and then push those forward to the leadership that could make that difference, the senators and congressmen and all of that, that we're able to say, okay, let's see what we can change. That was huge. So I guess that also ties into the challenge is selling the idea all the way up. It's not just going to happen, or it could just happen in your little area, in your little division, but it has incredibly limited impact.
Right.
And simply because we need that support system. We need that support system going up to the directors and the executive directors and the lieutenant governors, and and all the other people that are a part of the legislation of the state and of the government. They need to be able to see that. And that was a challenge. It took a while. We had to show them those results. And so there was, an annual kind of a I don't want to say state of the state, because that's way up here. But there was like an education day where we were able to meet. The Center of Operational Excellence met with all the state legislators and all of that, and shared, this is what we've done in the last year, and this is what we're looking to do. These are how much we've saved. And as governor, Senator Ricketts did a great job of continuing to promote in press conferences and in his newsletters. And it was, he needed to bang that drum all the time.
Right.
You know, that's another challenge when you're talking about a big organization.
Yes.
You know?
You had, I think it's funny how similar the private and public sector is. Everything that you're saying is translatable. I'm sure there are people that are listening in that are making the connection to their organization. When you talk about governor, when Senator Ricketts was governor, the governor, being the kind of the cheerleader for you as a like a champion that was bringing your requests and taking the roadblocks that you guys were having that you couldn't take care of at your level. He was taking that up to whoever needed to hear it, or he would remove the roadblock himself. But I mean, that is the picture of what is needed in all of our organizations from executive leadership support. We need someone in our corner that is engaged, excited, and giving us the support that we need in order to move forward. They're removing those roadblocks so we can keep moving forward. And that makes such a huge difference. I mean, It's massive. One of the things that he talked about during the address also was, when you think about pushing things forward, moving things forward, I mean, you guys trained 30,000 team members in Lean and Six Sigma concepts and principles. Right. That is a massive undertaking to train that many people, a huge dedication from the governor and from the state. That's massive. Yeah. But now we have to be careful here because so many organizations, they use number of people trained as a metric. Like, we got, X number of green belts, X number of yellow belts trained. And so we're hitting our numbers. Like, great job, everybody. Right. And then I always ask the question, like, well, that's great and all, but what kind of measurable impact are your yellow belts and green belts having in the organization? Right. That's where the real, that's what we really need to be thinking about is not necessarily, I mean, it's important, obviously, having an army of problem solvers, having an army of green belts that are trained in project management and understand how to do root cause analysis. Massive. That's very important. But that's the first step. The second step is, what kind of measurable impact are they having, not in their one project that they did to get certified, but now what are they doing continuously, month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year, to continue to drive results to the bottom line or back to the taxpayers. So my question is, how did you guys ensure that those 30,000 people were able to translate their training into real measurable change? Because clearly you did. You have multiple case study examples. So how did you do it? And then let's just discuss how we can translate back into the private sector.
Yeah, and we also were well aware of that. Like the governor did have a goal and a vision. You mentioned about having, well, we have this many, and we would count, and we did track those numbers, to make sure we did have that army. But how do we deploy them? How do we get them out there? One of the things that helped a ton for us is we had those process improvement coordinators embedded. So we were, as the practitioners, we were always going around and rubbing elbows with these people and asking them about, hey, how is it going? What and either asking them how things were going, inviting them into different projects. We also had goals of empowering them to start stand-ups and what we would call huddles. Like that was one of our pillars as the Center of Operational Excellence, and what we promoted to all the agencies was the daily huddles and getting people involved in that and sharing that knowledge. So it wasn't just the leader who could do that, but we empowered everyone and encouraged or educated everyone so that anyone at any point could lead a huddle. Anyone at any point could point to the huddle board and go, okay, this is exactly what's going on. Did we get everyone involved after the training? No. I mean, you mentioned it earlier to me, that term of, it's just, it's a vanity kind of a thing.
Vanity metrics. Yeah.
Yeah. Vanity metrics. We just wanted that classy B, at the end of the name, certified lean leader yellow belt, or, whatever it was. And that's a reality. But until you get people to have that knowledge first, and then the understanding, and then they see it, how it goes, and then they can start promoting it, and then they can start using it in their teams. And it was fun to see. I would walk down halls and whatnot and see fishbone diagrams of just sometimes seemingly random things, or, hear how other teams are working through some of their issues and how they're capturing and making it visual. Just the visuals of their processes and the tracking. I mean, that in itself right there is a step up once you start visualizing it and tracking things, rather than just doing your work. And are you achieving your goal? I don't know. I come here every day. I punch the clock. I punch some, I hit the keys, and then I go home. But we were promoting that. So giving them these ideas, these principles, and these tools was super helpful. But, the question that I have to ask, if we weren't there as process improvement coordinators, would it stick?
That's a really good question. In fact, I was just talking with someone this past week about the Danaher business system, and we were also reflecting on Parker Hannafin's business system, which I was a part of at one time in my career, and the importance of having a, call it what you want, a CI promotion office, a lean promotion office, the Danaher business system promotion office. Having an office of dedicated individuals who are facilitating, training, coaching, and they're helping to ensure alignment, right? You talked about, seeing fishbone diagrams and this and that. Well, are they working on the right stuff? Yes, they are, because we have alignment to the goals of the organization, and we're this middle group that's helping to ensure everything's cascaded properly, that there's consistency in what we're doing. We're ensuring that people are standing behind, holding people accountable to the things that we're supposed to be doing. So especially in the beginning of an organization's lean journey, and when I say in the beginning, that could be years and years and years of work, where you have this dedicated team of individuals who are helping to support the cause, right? Yeah. I think about at Parker, I was a plant lean manager. I reported directly to the plant manager, and then I had dotted line to our division lean manager, who oversaw, a few different sites. And then, that there was a direct report from the division lean manager to the group lean manager, the VP of lean, and then the CEO. And the reason why that was important, for a large global operation, is to ensure consistency, right? When I walked into a plant in Kentucky and checked out their site board, and I could see exactly where they were struggling, and I could go to where the problem is. I could find, all the tools that they were working on to reduce or eliminate the problems. I could walk into a site in Poland or, in India and see the exact same thing. And maybe it's in a different language, but I can follow the trail right to, because of the consistency that was there, embedded throughout the entire organization. And there's a ton of power in that when you,
that was huge. That was huge. And, I'm so glad you brought that up, because we struggled, but we really focused on that consistency, whether it be our methodology or our documentation. We made it so that if I was working on a project and for whatever reason won the lottery, had to leave, and you stepped in, you would know exactly where we were. You would know where the team was, because we always had the same documentation, around the state. We always had the same methodologies around the state. And did we have, the very best one? I don't know if there is a very best one. You take one that works best for you and for the situation and for your organization, right? And then disseminate that information and that knowledge and that, empowerment, so that everyone is marching in the same way,
Right. So important. And obviously, the goal is in an organization, is to embed the principles, embed the tools, and, create a culture of continuous improvement where the frontline workers, the individuals, everyone is contributing to the cause. And maybe that means someday down the road that your promotion office ends up, kind of embedding itself into the organization somewhere, and it goes away. But there's so much power in the beginning to get the momentum and to have that consistency of, individuals like you that are supporting in training, coaching, consulting, internally. One of the things that, as we kind of start to full circle here and wrap up, Senator Ricketts talked about he highlighted $115 million in hard savings, based on the initiatives, the lean continuous improvement initiatives that you guys worked on.
Yeah.
How did you guys measure that? How do you validate it? Is there a good process that you followed that we can help other companies to understand? Because it is important that we are capturing that information as lean practitioners working embedded in organizations.
Right.
We want to make sure that we know the soft savings that we're contributing to, because it's important when we go to tell the story and try to get other people excited and engaged and involved. And even, as you take the package from the state of Nebraska, that you guys put together, and bring it over to the state of Illinois or the state of Michigan, or, it would be nice to see those savings and how to actually calculate that. So any thoughts on that?
The biggest thing I can, because if I tell you exactly how we did it, it may not apply.
Sure.
Or the specific tool, because we did have a tool to be able to calculate, but what was behind that tool was collaboration and conversation. The governor and Matt Singh and the I think probably Jason Jackson was also involved in that, and as well as the budget, the head of the budget analyst, and all of that. They came together and said, okay, how can we start capturing these? What are the things that, what are the numbers we want to count? How do we know it's going to work, or that it's going to hold water if, the public says, okay, can you prove it? And so they developed the system that we were able to use, and the sheet, it tried to make it as simple of a document as we could, that just captured, okay, so, for instance, if it's a process, okay, we know that and the other thing that we added too, so we had the documentation, and the system behind it that captured the numbers, but we also had to go out and get those numbers. Mm-hmm. So we measured everything we were doing before and after. So if we came in and you were able to improve your process, Patrick, from 30 hours down to 12, okay, so what does that mean? How many hours is that? And how many hours, what's the financial benefit of that?
Right.
What would that look like? Well, it's Patrick's time times 30 hours, or however much annually, it is. And then we continued to track those for a year. As a process improvement coordinator, every project I did, it may have taken, say, 3 weeks to do, but I followed that for a year. And every month I would go back to the people who were involved and go back to the leadership there that was involved in that process and go, hey, so let's talk about what kind of savings do we have? Or are we still on board? It was kind of a way of sustainment, as well as ensuring that the numbers we projected, here's an estimate, we think you're going to be able to save this much in time or money, whatever it is. We wanted to make sure and validate that by following up. And so, we had, it was conversation and collaboration. It was making sure we were tracking the, whether it be the money, whether it be the time, whatever it is, and then the follow-up to validate, all the things that we said we were going to be able to do.
Love it. And I think that's a lesson for those that are listening in the private sector. If you're not bringing along someone in finance, or you don't know someone in finance or accounting that can validate and help you to get the financials, you're missing you're missing a big part here. When you run a Kaizen event, when you do any kind of a project, you have to keep finance involved so that they can kind of give that stamp of, yeah, we validated these numbers. This is real hard savings, or this is soft savings, this is hard savings, whatever that might be. And make sure that that's, because again, I'm just telling you from experience, being in an organization where, sometimes you're questioned on things like, did you really bring that much savings to the bottom line? Well, it's not just me saying it. Accounting has stamped it for approval. Like, they've gone through the numbers and validated it. This is real. Yes. These are real numbers. And that does help you, especially, as a Kaizen promotion office or a lean promotion office, to continue to, you spread the knowledge and work with more departments and organization, or more areas in your organization. There's a lot of value in that, right? Real measurable numbers. Shayne, obviously we could talk about this forever. We kind of got cut short on, I feel like I say that a lot in our episodes, because you and I both were super passionate. We could go on, but obviously a portion of this episode, was the recording from Senator Ricketts. Hats off to the team, to the senator. And my hope is that we see, some similar work being done, coming from the Office of Efficiency at the federal level. How amazing would that be? But state and local governments, don't wait. Jump on board. Yes. There's plenty of case studies and great people like Shayne that would be willing to talk with you to share what's been done. And what an amazing opportunity that is for state and local government to, put that value back into the taxpayers' laps, and just really be able to showcase the amazing work that's happening at that level. So again, thanks, Shayne, for all the work that you did there. And I appreciate you going through all the details of that, and really look forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, me too. It was a great experience.